Sometimes you've got to convince yourself of something if you really want it. I think at the beginning of pursuing a goal, it's clear that we want to achieve something and we know that we're capable of it. But then as time goes on, we face doubt, we face setbacks, we face uncertainty. Nothing ever goes to plan. So what are the effects of these things on us, and how do we actually navigate moving towards the thing that it is that we want? When I think of the best things that I've achieved in my life, or even the accomplishments that I'm most proud of, most of them never came around easily. They took hard work. They took long, tedious hours of practice, learning, a lot of frustration, and at times I just wanted to quit and I couldn't be bothered and I felt like I needed a rest from them. And I think in the beginning there is this like burning fire of motivation, and this was what led me head first down the path of seeking the goal, whatever that goal was. When I think to rugby, I remember watching the 2007 Rugby World Cup as a 13-year-old, and I had this inspirational feeling that sent me on the journey of wanting to become one of the players that was out there on the field. It was one country against another in a physical battle to see who could come out on top, and the idea of being that person completely inspired me at my core. So from this point on, I knew deep down that I'd love to become a professional rugby player, and I was decent at other sports like golf, football. There was something about rugby that really stood out to me, and it had become clear that this was the path that I wanted to pursue over the next coming years. Did I think that I was going to be able to become pro? To be honest, I didn't even think that deeply about it. I knew I wanted to achieve it, and I knew I loved it, and the motivation and inspiration was prevalent enough, which I guess led me to take action. So at 13, I started to take rugby more seriously. I played a lot of different sports, so I learned how to coordinate my body pretty effectively. I was reasonably athletic, and I'd also played rugby when I was a little bit younger, so I knew the basics of like passing and that all these types of things. So I think I just managed to set off on a good foot, and I was able to tackle pretty hard and built up some decent hand-eye coordination from the likes of golf, and was pretty fit from playing football. So the first couple of years went from strength to strength for me. Started off playing at fullback, and then began migrating further towards the lower numbers. I played centre, I then played number 8, and eventually played lock. I actually played a game at tight head prop, and then from then onwards it was I was 6 or 8 pretty consistently from then. The first couple of years were smooth. I kept getting better and better. There was a lot to learn. I feel like I managed to learn it quite quick, and I think it helped that I was probably one of the bigger kids. I developed quicker than most, and as I began to rise up the ranks and things got a bit more serious, I began to hit some more sort of walls and challenges, and I was playing against better players, I was playing against better teams, and the seriousness of things I think started to weigh more heavily on me. It seemed like the consequences and the outcomes began to become more important, and as a young man I think I started to become conscious of doubt, a little bit of fear crept in, and I became more invested in the outcomes of everything that I was doing, which distracted me from the present experience of actually just playing the game. And the weight of this I think became harder to bear. It seemed like a lot of times my motivation was actually just being squashed and I'd ran out of it. But fortunately I'd met some coaches who'd been through similar experiences themselves, and I think they knew how to address this, and they could see it in me. It wasn't even like I had told them about what I was experiencing, because I think at this point I wouldn't have been able to articulate it, but it was like they knew what I was going through because they'd faced it before, and in some ways it was like they knew me better than I knew myself. And they taught me the importance of keeping in mind what it was that I wanted, because things can get difficult, and during those periods it can be hard to remain focused, driven, motivated and inspired. And this is the topic of this video. It's to achieve something special. Sometimes I think we've got to convince ourselves of something if it's actually what we really want. So what does this look like? Well, I think it's really just creating in your own mind what you want to be or what you want, and then being it. And there's different ways to look at this. Some techniques or practices work better for others, but to sort of summarise, you've probably got visualising, looking at a vision board, affirmations, daydreaming, and some kind of gratitude practice are quite common ones. But why are these things helpful? Well, we don't perceive things the way they are. We perceive things the way that we are. Now, this is a quote by scientist and New York Times bestseller Joe Dispenza. And I think what he's trying to point to here is that all experience is subjective. We experience our experience whatever we think, feel, or perceive through the senses, we experience in the moment. This doesn't mean we have complete control over what we experience, and that if we experience something bad, we should beat ourselves up. It's actually the opposite of that. Human beings are multifaceted, and we've got many different parts to us, but we always experience now. And whatever shows up now, whether it be a memory of the past, a vision of the future, we experience that in the moment now. And it seems like we're experiencing the past or the future, but no one's actually ever been there. Experience is always here now. And from this understanding and perspective, it's inevitable that we will lose sight and become distracted by experience, and we can't continuously focus on what it is that we want and what we're inspired by. Experience doesn't actually work like that. Another quote, "People who live in the past are asleep in the present," by Joe Dispenza. The present moment is a gift, and that's why it's called the present moment. When we give a gift to someone, we also call that a present. The practice of consciously creating in the moment as a practice makes rational sense if you think about it. We know that we're going to have a multitude of different experiences when chasing down a goal, and that's life. The practice of creating who it is that we want to be and what it is that we want in the present moment adds up. The present moment is abundant, and a lot of the time it doesn't seem so because it appears to be weighed down by memories of the past or anxieties of the future. The present moment gives rise to everything. All potential exists within it, and that includes the potential for you to exceed what you think your potential is. There was a point in my career where I stopped doing these practices because the belief in Adam became so strong that he knew best. And I'd lost sight of the power of the present moment and its ability to actually create abundantly. And I began disregarding its power and stopped using practices like visualization, gratitude, and designing a future that I'd actually like. And I guess I became complacent to the forces of potential and my own ability to actually create. So we get caught up in our minds, which is inevitable, and it's easy to get lost in these things. I think we can all admit to that. We can get pulled into unhelpful narratives, we forget what it is that we want, and we can spiral into irrational nonsense, which I think distracts us from what it is that we'd love. And this is just part of being human, and when trying to achieve something challenging, I think that we'll always face the struggles of the ego and what the ego sort of throws at us. Sometimes we need to convince ourselves and remind ourselves of what it is that we actually want during times of uncertainty. And at times I completely lost the idea of that. In hard times I got pulled under by past experiences that acted as weights that almost like sat on top of my dream and my vision of what I wanted to become as a professional athlete, professional rugby player. And it's only as I've got older that I think I see the importance of creating and in some ways convincing at times myself and what it is that I actually want out of life. And this has always been part of the biggest achievements that I've accomplished in my own life. Like when I think about it, my pro rugby career, representing my country at rugby, earning more money, becoming more abundant financially, founding a business that I had a vision for, having a successful relationship and marriage. During the hard times, we need to remember who it is that we want to be based on what's important for us. For young athletes, the simple practice of revisiting what's important for you is huge. I think to get clear on what it is that you'd love for your future, write it down daily. Remind yourself and envision it in your mind. See yourself already with it. Feel as if you've already done it. Watch yourself having achieved it. Sometimes I think it's healthy for us to make space in our experience and live what we'd like right now as if we've already got it. Thanks for watching. Check out the mental framework. Drop me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram, or you can email me adamasherugby@gmail.com. Cheers.